In a world where GMO is omnipresent in our diets, have you ever wondered about its effects on your health? In today's video, we will take you on a journey where we will uncover the hidden truths behind GMO, genetically modified organism. From digestive discomfort to long-term health risks, it's time to explore the impact of genetically modified organisms on your body. But before we dive into this, please ring that bell for future notifications and subscribe to the Healthy K channel. So let's jump right in. First of all, let's find out what GMO is. GMO is a plant, animal, microorganism, or other organism whose genetic makeup has been modified in laboratory using genetic engineering or transgenic. Symptom number 1, digestive issue. Let's talk about your tummy. We all know that feeling when our digestive system doesn't quite agree with something we've eaten. It can be uncomfortable, to say the least. GMO all over our food, from corn to soybeans, and they were designed to make farming more efficient. But what about our bodies? Some studies suggest that GMOs could be unsettling our stomachs. One study involving rats and a genetically modified corn variety called NK603 raised eyebrows. It found that this specific genetically modified organism could lead to adverse effects on the rat's digestive tracts. While rats aren't humans, it's a red flag that makes you wonder. And it's not just rats. Some folks have reported tummy troubles after consuming genetically modified organisms. They've mentioned things like bloating, cramps, or irregular bowel movements. These digestive discomforts could be linked to the genetic changes in our food. Now, we're not saying that every tummy ache is caused by genetically modified organisms. Our digestive systems can be finicky, but the fact that genetically modified organisms could be contributing to these issues is worth considering. Symptom number 2, allergies and sensitivities. Suppose you're enjoying your meal when suddenly your immune system goes haywire, causing you to break out in hives or experience a sudden, severe reaction. If you're one of the many individuals with allergies or sensitivities, you're familiar with these uncomfortable and sometimes life-threatening experiences. What's surprising is that genetically modified organisms might be playing a role in these allergic episodes. The connection between genetically modified organisms and allergic reactions is a subject of growing concern. It revolves around specific proteins in genetically modified foods. Genetically modified organisms often involve the introduction of foreign genes into a plant's DNA to confer particular traits, like pest resistance or increased shelf life. While this genetic tweaking can make crops hardier, it can also introduce new proteins that our immune systems might perceive as threats. One noteworthy instance is the Starlink corn incident. In the early 2000s, a genetically modified corn called Starlink was approved for animal consumption, but not for human consumption due to concerns about potential allergic reactions. However, traces of this corn found their way into various food products, leading to reports of allergic reactions in humans. Symptom number 3, antibiotic resistance. Antibiotics are our first line of defense against bacterial infections, but the rise of antibiotic resistance threatens to erode their effectiveness. Surprisingly, genetically modified organisms have been linked to this growing concern. The connection between GMOs and antibiotic resistance revolves around the process of creating genetically modified crops. In many cases, a gene for antibiotic resistance is used as a marker to indicate that the genetic modification has been successful. While the antibiotic resistance gene is not intended to be present in the final genetically modified organism product, there are concerns about potential horizontal gene transfer. This means that genes from genetically modified organisms could potentially spread to other organisms, including bacteria. There have been cases where antibiotic resistance genes from genetically modified organisms have been detected in bacteria. For example, a study published in Environmental Biosafety Research identified antibiotic resistance genes in bacteria from the digestive tracts of cows that had been fed genetically modified organisms. While the impact on human health is not entirely clear, the presence of antibiotic resistance genes in bacteria is a red flag, as it can contribute to the growing problem of antibiotic-resistant infections. Symptom number 4, hormonal imbalances. Our bodies are like finely tuned machines, with hormones acting as the gears that keep everything running smoothly. But what happens when genetically modified organisms enter the equation? Could they throw off the hormonal balance? The concern is that certain genetically modified organisms might interfere with our hormonal functions. Some genetically modified crops are engineered to resist pests by producing their pesticides. One such genetically modified organism is known as bit cotton, which contains a protein that acts as an insecticide. Now, when we consume these genetically modified organisms, our bodies might be exposed to these proteins. And here's where the concern arises. There is some evidence to suggest that these proteins could potentially disrupt our hormonal systems. Although the research is still ongoing, it raises questions about how genetically modified organisms could influence our hormones. One case that caught the researchers' attention is the story of the monarch butterflies. These butterflies, when exposed to pollen from bit corn, experienced hormonal changes, affecting their ability to reproduce. While butterflies and humans are quite different, it serves as a reminder that genetically modified organisms can have unexpected effects on living organisms. Symptom number 5. Increased toxicity. We often assume that the food we consume is nourishing and free of harmful substances. However, when it comes to genetically modified organisms, there's a growing concern about the potential for increased toxicity. The issue here revolves around the introduction of genetically modified organisms designed to produce their pesticides. For example, bit crops like bit cotton and bit corn have been engineered to generate a protein toxic to certain pests. While this can be effective in reducing the need for chemical pesticides, it also means that when we consume these genetically modified organisms, we might be exposed to these toxins. The question is whether this increased toxin exposure could impact our health. Some studies have raised concerns. One study published in the journal Food Chemistry detected higher levels of certain toxins in genetically modified soybean varieties compared to their genetically modified organism counterparts. Additionally, when it comes to herbicide-resistant genetically modified organisms, the issue of increased toxicity is twofold. First, the increased use of herbicides on these crops raises concerns about the residues of these chemicals in our food. There is growing evidence that exposure to herbicides like glyphosate, which is commonly used with herbicide-resistant genetically modified organisms, might have health implications, potentially increasing toxicity levels in our bodies. Symptom number 6. Organ damage. Our organs are like the orchestra of our bodies, each one playing a crucial role in the symphony of life. But what happens when genetically modified organisms step onto the stage? Could they disrupt the harmony and lead to organ damage? The concern centers around the potential harm genetically modified organisms might cause to vital organs. Some studies have raised questions about the effects of genetically modified organism consumption on organs. One study conducted on rats and published in the journal Food and Chemical Toxicology found that a diet of genetically modified corn led to significant organ damage, particularly affecting the liver and kidneys of the animals. In another instance, research indicated that herbicide-resistant genetically modified organisms could play a role in organ damage. Glyphosate, a widely used herbicide in conjunction with these genetically modified organisms, has been associated with adverse effects on the liver and kidneys in animal studies. While these findings are concerning, it's essential to remember that scientific research is ongoing, and the effects of genetically modified organisms on human organs are still being explored. Symptom number 7. Weight gain. Let's talk about something many of us are familiar with: weight concerns. You might be wondering if those genetically modified organisms hiding in your food have anything to do with those extra pounds. Well, it's a bit like solving a puzzle, and here's why. Genetically modified organisms often find their way into our diet through foods we love, like snacks and processed goodies. It's not that genetically modified organisms themselves are making us gain weight. Instead, it's about the foods they're in. These often come with extra calories that can pile up. Now, scientists have been doing some detective work. They've studied animals and how genetically modified organisms might affect their weight. Some studies suggest that genetically modified organisms could influence metabolism and lead to weight changes. But here's the twist: animals and humans don't always react the same way, so it's still a bit of a mystery. Another part of the puzzle is the herbicides used on GMO crops. Some research hints that exposure to these chemicals might mess with our metabolism, potentially nudging us toward weight gain. While the debate surrounding genetically modified organisms continues, it's essential to stay informed and make choices that align with our health and well-being. Do you have any experiences or insights related to genetically modified organisms? Have you ever wondered about their impact on our health? We would love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the Healthy K channel